Hi everybody, welcome. I'm Steve Rother. I'm the channel for the group here at Espavo.org. Welcome to the Backstory Podcast. You know, we started this podcast a while back for a lot of different reasons. Number one, we wanted a different way to be able to bring you pertinent information, things that the group is saying. We're putting out a lot of seminars, and sometimes I'll say something over here, they'll repeat it in Lightmaster, or sometimes I'll say it in Lightmaster and never repeat it again. So this is an opportunity for me to just talk as Steve and be able to kind of give you my opinion and my view of some of the things the group are saying. And then, of course, we've been doing a lot of wonderful interviews. We've got some incredible light workers on this planet right now. And many of you are here, or what we call awakening. You're starting to move into a whole different environment where your passion becomes incredibly important. So we wanted to introduce you to a bunch of people that have done the same thing, that have basically started. Sometimes many of these people have actually started in our seminars that we've done all over the world for the last 20 years, 25 years. I forgot how old. I don't even know how old I am, so that's okay. So today I want to talk about something it's really kind of funny, because this is a really big, important subject, especially to Steve. And partly because it was so confusing to me, and it still is. But we've got some really interesting things that are taking place globally about balancing science and metaphysics. Okay? So metaphysics are what I do. I'm a channel. I speak to entities from the other side of the veil. Science is a different environment, entirely different than what we do here in those areas. And yet, I use a lot of science in the teaching. The group shows me things and they'll say, look this up, or check this out, or see this. And then I Google it and I come up with, some quantum physics experiment that just completely validates all the things they're saying. So we have always been, especially the last, 10 years, we've been looking for this blend between science and metaphysics to where we can see this in both directions and so forth. And that's really what I want to speak about today. That's the aspect that I want to talk about here this day, is the blend of spirituality and science. Now, I have to say, hard and fast scientists are going to cringe at the thought of those two mixing. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And it's really important to keep in mind, no one's right or no one's wrong, okay? We're both, just like almost everybody on Earth, we're trying to get to the same place, but we're using different methods. That's all. So with that in mind, I want to talk a little bit about that. Like I said, the group talks a lot, especially about quantum sciences, quantum physics, quantum mechanics, about being able to use that, because it actually naturally validates a lot of things the group is talking about. One of the things, just to give you a quick, for instance, the double slit experiment in quantum physics. I'm not going to go into the whole experiment. It's not important. And I know many of you are not technical, so I'm going to try and stay out of the technologies today and too much of the sciences. But it fascinates me. I've studied science. I get 4 or 5 science magazines in the bathroom all the time. So yeah, I'm always reading and watching documentaries and so forth on this stuff. And there's some incredible stuff out there. But in looking at that, there's some really interesting things that are taking place that I want to address. When I first started channeling in general was feared. It was considered at that time a woo-woo science. That's basically what they called it. And the funny part about it is we talked about this in some of our bigger seminars on the first day, and we all joked about being woo-woo scientists and everything else. We came back the next day with with little hats that said woo-woo scientist, all the different things. So the reality is we live in a different world. And that's the key that the group wants to bring up today, about the different worlds that we live in, the different aspects that we work in, and what that looks like having to do with science and metaphysics. Now, there's a lot of people that are doing a really good job of bringing these two together. There's Greg Braden. There's a whole slew of people out there that are doing just a really good job of this. And yet, what I'm going to talk about today is basically the whole function of science and the function of metaphysics. Okay? So here's the first aspect that I want to talk about, and it's from personal experience. I'll tell you what motivated me to do this. I watch a lot of documentaries. I absolutely love the on Prime. There's the Great Courses series, and I love that. It's not well produced, but it's got a lot of good information. It's got a lot of bad information in it too, so you got to kind of go through. But that's life. Anyway, I watch a lot of documentaries. I watch a lot of things. I love to kind of stir my mind and educate myself in different ways. So it's fun. In the meantime, I'm taking this course, and it's like 9 sessions or something. It's a fairly small course, but in that it was called critical thinking. Well, I didn't really know what the words critical thinking meant, but here I am taking this little course, and it's 9 episodes, about an hour and a half each, on critical thinking, what that is. And they start talking about critical thinking, and they start talking about how the brain works and everything, all of which the group absolutely agrees with, 100%. I'm getting excited because they're going to show me some new techniques about a tool for focusing our life energy and so forth, to be able to focus and not waste a lot of time and everything else that we typically do. So in this critical thinking, it became, their little red flags kept coming up, and the gentleman kept talking about what it was like and what it was. And then at one point, he said something that was just completely threw me off. I had to stop watching at that point. And he basically said, are you a person who believes in space beings and believes that people have been abducted and believes that the governments are hiding it? If so, you're not a critical thinker. Well, that it's like the group says, change the channel. So I stopped right away and left a little review, because to me, and what I said in the review was, I said, I was really fascinated by what you were saying until you said this. There's not many astrophysicists out there, because astrophysicists happen to know a little bit about how big this universe really is. We look at the stars in the sky and we see all these, if you're in a place where you can actually see them, we see all these incredible amounts. If you've ever been out in like the desert, I go out to Zion all the time, to Red Rock Canyon, to different places here in my part of the world near Las Vegas. And you can actually see the Milky Way, and it lights up the sky. When you can get away from the light pollution in a place where it's fairly comfortable, you can see some really beautiful things. But there's billions, and we call them stars. Many of those are galaxies with billions of stars in them. With those kind of numbers, for anybody to say that they know this is right and that there's no other life in the universe, even if you don't believe in aliens, even if you don't believe in any abductions. He even referenced the lady in New York that was seen by 40 or 50 people who was actually taken out of a building and raised up in the sky. One of them happened to be the mayor of one of the cities there. So literally this was a stab. So to me, like I said, it was very closed-mindedness when he said those things, because it basically means that we're a bit arrogant, aren't we? And we believe we're the only ones, or we naturally believe that we are the highest vibration of everything, because when we look at our situation on Earth, we're a higher vibration than the trees. We're a higher vibration than the other animals, the dogs, the cats, the horses, all the rest of it. So we tend to think in those terms. And I do believe that we get rather arrogant with a lot of these belief systems. And me personally, I've had a really hard time talking about aliens, about space beings, about some of the history. The group has no problem. I will tell you that group has no problem talking about it. It's Steve that has pulled a lot of that back. I have no idea why I had so much trouble with it, but I did. So anyway, I'm not trying to convince people of alien life or anything during this podcast. Again, what I'm talking about is science versus metaphysics. Okay? So let me bring it to a different area. Science is very well defined, very clear boundaries, very straight lines. Jim Self calls straight lines male, curvy lines female. I love that analogy. So very straight lines, very, very specific, very hard and fast rules, and all about credentials. In fact, this entire course series that I signed up for, the courses on Prime Video, they spend the first 15 minutes telling you all about the credentials. And he's at this set, and he's done this, and he's been all around the world. Well, the reality is we don't hear from many people who've won Nobel Prizes, who've won Nobel Prizes in science and physics, in astrophysics, or any of these things. We just generally don't hear about it. There's a few people that step forward. We've got Neil deGrasse Tyson, an astrophysicist who comes forward. We've got Michio Kaku, one of my favorite people. I just really like his open-mindedness. Neil deGrasse Tyson, not so much. Brian Greene, yes, yeah, wonderful, wonderful scientist coming in with some of this information. Sometimes closed-minded, sometimes open. It doesn't really make any difference. It doesn't change what they're presenting. But what it does is takes their attitudes and brings it into the work sometimes, which kind of taints it a little bit for me anyway. So I will tell you right off the bat, I have no credentials. Okay, so if that's really important to you, you may want to change channels right now because I have none. In fact, I didn't even go to college. The reality is that the group came in and started bringing me these things, and I did a lot of research in different areas. I'm fairly intelligent anyway, but they brought a whole bunch of this information in, and I just exploded in this energy. So for the past 26 years now, or 27 years actually, I've been doing a lot of this work and talking a lot about sciences. We talk about the solar flares. We talk about the solar cycles, what they do to the Earth, the neutrinos. And I have to tell you, the group has a slightly different story than science. We know, for instance, that when we have solar flares, when we go into solar maximus every 12 years, that we get pelted with these neutrinos. We know that because we have neutrino counters all over the globe now, usually underground, usually in total darkness, as total as they can get. And we know that we get pelted with neutrinos. Neutrinos are so small that billions of them pass through your body without ever having an effect. At least that's what science says. The group says, no, sorry, they have an effect. They not only have an effect with you, but they have an effect with the Earth. And they happen to say, by the way, they're really good for the Earth. So although you can get too many solar flares, they've got their electrical components, of course, that can knock out shortwave radio signals. They can put extra charges in the electrical wires because it is electricity, which is magnetism and electricity. And they can actually cause a lot of challenges in different ways. But the group says, celebrate them when they come in. No, science is not saying that. Science is just saying, watch out, we're going to have a solar flare we're going to hit and everything else. So it's a different approach in different ways. So I will tell you that although we do talk a lot about science, many times, the group has a different opinion than many of the foremost scientists in the world. The one that I really agree with most is Michio Kaku. That's why I kind of really enjoy listening to him and his open-mindedness. He's absolutely incredible. The biggest thing that the group says in all of their messages is that we are creator beings. That's not supported by science at all. At all. So we live in different worlds. And that's the point of what I want to talk about. We've been talking about the blend of science and metaphysics. From what the group tells me, we will blend them together on the outside, but science will never change. It can't. It lives in a totally different world. Let me give you another illustration. If we have a spiral of electromagnetism, which the group says travels in spirals, everybody else travels in waves. Actually, the electrical wave travels this way, the magnetic wave travels this way. The group says if you put it together, it's actually a spiral. Anyway, just interesting point. Electromagnetism are both part of each other. The magnetism is, in fact, a part of the electricity. Can you separate them? Yes, you can. You can use one without the other, and yet they both come from the electromagnetic spectrum. So if we take this spiral, and we'll just call it a circle for a moment, and we measure it this way, we have magnetism. If we measure it this way, we have electricity. It's a good illustration the group has been using for years, especially in Light Master course. We've been talking a lot about that. So with those two things, we're going to take that to a next level. And simply put it, and I will tell you that, again, Jim Self was the one who originally came up with this information. But let's put that into the physical human condition and say that the head is electrical and that the heart is magnetic. Okay? That's the difference between science and metaphysics. They live in different worlds. Can they work together? Yes. If they don't ignore each other. If they don't devoid each other in different ways. So that's the idea of this. This is electrical. This is magnetic. Now, should we blend them together and make the head more magnetic? Well, probably not. You need your head to be thoughts. You need your head to be thinking. And science lives up here. Metaphysics live down here. And that's the main difference. Spirituality is here. Science is here. Can I prove my spirituality up here? No, you can't. Have you ever tried it? One of the greatest thing that we have on this planet, the group actually calls it the universal energy. We'll get into much more of that at another time. But basically they say we feel that as love. So if love is one of the most important things on this planet, how come science has never written about it? Science cannot quantify love. It's very simple. It's not supposed to. It lives down here. It doesn't live up here. We can fall in love up here. We can have our images that we love to reflect. You know, you always fall in love with people that somewhat look like you. And if you're together a long time, you start looking like each other. Have you ever seen those illustrations? I was married to a very beautiful woman. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. That's true. Because I definitely wasn't beautiful. So anyway, that's the idea of the differences. Now, I do believe that many times people get very locked into their belief systems. And one of the biggest challenges that I have about those differences and what science refers to us as many times is pseudoscience. That's really kind of a slap in the face, isn't it? I mean, we could call them pseudo-metaphysics, couldn't we? I mean, really. If you're talking about the double slit experiment, you talk about the fact that if you turn off the cameras and you stop watching that experiment, it changes. Are you a creator being or what? The group says if you ever see any experiment, any double-blind experiment, any double-blind study, they try to go out of it, and they are always influenced by the person who decided to do that study in the first place. Even if they have nothing to do with setting it up or nothing to do with the testing or the running of the system. They influence it because you're a creator being. So that's part of the difference between science and metaphysics. Science is going to be on simple, factual, observable items, which is great. We need that, absolutely need it. And yet, why do we have so many religions on the world? Why do we have so many religious people on the planet? And I know most hardline scientists are absolutely not religious. They're not only not religious, they're not spiritual. And that's really a shame. So here we are again at the difference. Now, it's an interesting aspect. The study and everything else about it. Of course, you can study metaphysics. You can get degrees in different aspects of religion, all the theology that's out there, and all the billions of opportunities that you have to work in those areas. And they're both highly respected. It's kind of funny, but because the religious person is more highly respected in the scientific community if they have this long list of degrees. So there we go again, back to the degrees, back to the validation. Okay. Now let's get back to the word that really bothers me, and that's the pseudoscience. What do they call Well, they call astrology pseudoscience. So let's just take astrology for just a moment. Humans used to look at the sky. They'd see these beautiful things and imagine that was a dog, imagine that this was something else, imagine that this was a fish, and be able to do that. And then, of course, all the stories behind it. It could just be that they're channeling. Now, obviously, I'm open to that because I am a channel myself. That's how I get my information. That's how this comes through me. Do I pretend to know more than a scientist? No, not in their world. I know more about metaphysics. I know more about spirituality, probably, than most of them, but it's not a race, and we're not comparing each other. That's not the idea. The idea is to stimulate and maybe work together. That's the beautiful part of this whole aspect that I get very excited about. So spirituality and metaphysics do not blend together. They live in different worlds. You're not going to be able to quantify different things in science unless you let go of some belief systems that you may have in metaphysics. And the reverse is also true. Now, is it wrong? Is it wrong that we're different and we're not going to blend together? No, it's not wrong. We need the scientists to be very specific in their realm. It would be wonderful if they can say, well, here's what we've discovered, and we don't go into here because we've had trouble with this before, so we draw a line right here, and here's what we've discovered. And over here, metaphysics says, well, we don't have lines, we have curves. And our curves go around in different ways to be able to see things in different ways. So again, living in different realities. And it's not wrong. It's absolutely not wrong. So when you see these different things that are taking place, you have so many wonderful people out there that I love to listen to and so forth. But at certain points, I have to turn it off. I just cannot take the closed-mindedness and the arrogance of some scientists in this world. And at the same time, if they're not putting us down, they say, this could be, well, that's perfect. Now, let's go back to astrology for a second. Does astrology work? Not 100%. I don't know any astrologist that does that. Astrology isn't meant to give you a specific guideline of everything that works every time. Astrology, at least in my experience, has always been about, here's a path down here, and if you follow this, you can go in this direction, and here's your natural tendencies according to the stars. And here's what's coming on the planet according to the stars. Allison Chester Lambert, the astrologist here at Espavo for so many years, was incredibly accurate. People loved to say, now, was it specific? Did she say on this date this is going to happen? Well, she did. She say on this date this changes and this moves into this house and this shifts and this is going to cause this to change and so forth. But she didn't make specifically accurate predictions that would have been more accepted in science. Why? Again, in metaphysics, we tend to work with the curvy lines instead of the straight ones. We tend to be a little bit more open in different areas to be able to accept different things in different ways. That, to me, is where I like to live. Now, that's just me. Scientists are over here, and I know some scientists in my own field, friends of mine that are hard-line scientists. And 25 years ago, when I started channeling the group, some of them actually stopped being friends with me. Okay, so 25 years ago when we started channeling was still fairly new. There was Lee Carroll, there was Seth, there was some really big names on this planet, Jane Roberts. And we can spend all day talking about those incredible people that have really done. Of course, Edgar Casey. You go back much further, you've got all these people like Nostradamus. You've got many people who were never considered to be channels that absolutely were. Aristotle. You've got a lot of people like that that got a lot of information very quickly and was able to use it in different ways to bring it through. Perfect. So here's another thing the group says. You are creator beings. What do you believe? Do you believe that astrology works? If you believe that astrology works and you're a creator being, you're going to create it to work for you. It's that simple. So to close anything off as a pseudoscience, to close anything off as not perfect or just an imitation of this is kind of ridiculous. And I will also tell you, in Lightmaster, many times the group says, we're going to hold something up for them. And I go, what are you talking about? What do you mean you're going to hold something up for them? And what they're talking about is that we are talking to hundreds of super creative beings all over the world through the Lightmaster class. And they say, today, we're going to hold this up for them. And we're going to give them this information. And we're going to tell them to look at this. And they're creator beings. And many of them will create that. So sometimes we're telling people, here's a possibility. Do you believe this? If you believe this, we can give you some energy around it. We can show you how to ground it. We can work with you in a different way. And you can create it because you're a creator being. It's that simple. Not easy, but it's simple. So these are the things that we really wanted to talk about having to do with science and metaphysics. I do not believe that we will ever get to a point, at least in my lifetime, and I may not have that much time left, but the reality is I don't think we're going to get there right away. The sciences are very specific about their lines, their boundaries, where things end, where things are, and how things are proven. Very simple. They live up here, and that's not wrong. We need to have the balance between this and this. So they bring that side of it to it. And like I said, I'm into science all the time. I'm always looking for the new aspects of things, the new discoveries. The James Webb Telescope has opened up the world of understanding and actually validated a whole bunch of things the group's been saying for a whole bunch of years. Like maybe time is an illusion. A lot of things the group has been talking about are actually starting to be validated by science. Does that mean that science is going to read one of my books and say, oh, here's somebody you'll have to read yet? No. To them, I'm a pseudoscience because I live here. I don't live here. And if they want me to just bring you information, that's not Steve. Steve lives here. Steve loves the hard energy. Steve loves to make people empowered and feel good. That's the whole purpose of us coming together. That's the whole idea of what we're doing here. And I think that's why the group chose me to channel. So with this energy here, I wanted to bring this today and talk a little bit about this because there's so much confusion about science and metaphysics. Choose yourself. And just because Neil deGrasse Tyson really angers me sometimes, it doesn't mean that I can't get good information from him, does it? It really doesn't. If you listen and you just go, oh, this is for me. I love this. Oh, he just said something that's not for me. So do you throw the whole baby out with the bathwater? Or do you take the pieces that resonate with you? That's what the group says. If you pick up something that isn't for you. It simply means it wasn't placed there for you. It was placed there for someone else. You know, like I said, I do have a little difficulty with the arrogance of some scientists, with the incredible division. And a lot of people are that way too, because the scientists promote that. Many scientists, not all. And there's so many scientists that have changed throughout their lifetimes. Carl Sagan, absolutely incredible atheist to begin with. Fascinating what happened to him during his lifetime and how he changed, how he shifted a lot of his energy to open up to so many other incredible things. So there's a lot of these things that are taking place. We're going to see a lot more. We have massive discoveries, advancements in technology, in sciences of all sorts that are going to be coming to this planet over the next several years. We see it already. The reality is the last 75 years on this earth have brought more advances in technology than any place has ever seen. Certainly much more advances in technology than the thousands of years added up before us. Why? Well, there's a whole bunch of things, and we can get into that in another podcast because that's going to take some exclamation. But the reality is we're going to see massive advances in technology, in sciences, in our understanding. That's what this is. Do we need faster computers? Do we need all that? Well, the race is on, isn't it? AI's here. We're going to have, the quantum computers where you used to take up a whole room with a cooling system. Quantum computer, by the way, the chip is only this big. It's just it looks just like a regular ICU in a computer. So it doesn't really look much difference, but it has to be cooled. So that's why all the equipment is around it. Well, not anymore. It just happened fairly recently. Google has talked about it. Other people have talked about it. Google's actually put theirs on hold for the time being while some other things settle down because they're a little concerned about what's taking place. But it's not going to be long before quantum computing will be available to everyone. It's available now, but it's still pretty expensive. You can go to IBM's Watson. You can do a lot of other aspects to be able to get into Google's quantum computers and use them. You can do a lot of things in that way to be able to use it a little bit. But if it's in everybody's home, if it's in everybody's pocket like a cell phone, things are going to get really interesting on this planet quickly. Things are going to change. We know that the speed of the computers, which most people don't really care whether you hit a button and it takes 30 microseconds or 300 microseconds, they don't really care. It's not going to make that much difference. But what if you had a computer that was looking to find out what your passwords were? And they were going to try all the combinations possible. Well, they can probably do it. And sometimes it will take years of trying with all the combinations. Not with quantum computing, instantaneous. And that's the difference. So our lives are going to change drastically as the technology rises very quickly. The buzz is all about AI. Everybody's using AI. It's wonderful in some ways. Is it scary? Of course it is. We have a lot of changes in things. We have no control over it, no rules in place, and we don't even, because most people don't really know what it is. Don't really know what the capabilities of AI or quantum computing can do. But if you just look at our computers are binary. They work on ones and zeros. It's that simple. But thousands and thousands of those will make up a letter. Or maybe not thousands, but that'll make up a line of code maybe or something of that nature. When you have quantum computing, they have qubits. It's quite different. And they're variable. So instead of ones and zeros, you got ones, zeros, 1 plus 0, 1 minus 0, 0, 0, 1, 1. You've got unbelievable amounts of capabilities that are being unleashed. All of the quantum computing, by the way, is based on quantum physics. It's actually based on the thing that the group has talked about a lot, quantum entanglement, where two particles are exactly the same. They move in opposite directions most of the time, but you move one, the other moves instantaneously. Not a lag, but instantaneously, even if they are millions of miles apart. So they're part of each other. That's what the group says. They say, you're connected that way too. Humans are part of each other. You're part of every tree, of every rock, of every insect that walks around on the planet. You have just disconnected that knowingness of that as you came to planet Earth to have this little incarnation. But if you become aware that you are connected to things and actually try to tap into them, you can start to feel them. Now, back to the other subject. Are you creating it or is it real? The group says it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference. If you can get something out of it that works, use it. And that's the aspect that we wanted to bring you here today. So I love science myself. I study a lot of science. I get enthralled with science. Sometimes I've learned that I really can't watch it at night because the brain gets moving so fast I can't go to sleep. So anyway, it's kind of fun stuff. But I've always been very curious about how the rest of the world saw the difference between metaphysics and science. And I've heard channels talk about, in the next 5 years, it's all going to blend together. I've heard spiritual people talking about, we're being recognized, science is recognizing our work and all these other things. And I don't think so. I think science is going to stay exactly where it is, and it should. It absolutely should. We need those straight lines. We need the curved lines too. We need the head and we need the heart. And I will tell you, when the group says, if you're trying to manifest anything, balance it between your head and your heart and watch what the universe returns for you. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that today. I thoroughly enjoyed being with you here and kind of rambling a little bit about one thing that really frustrates me sometimes and yet excites me at the same time. So the reality is we're on this planet together. If we can work together and we can honor the straight lines and we can honor the curved lines and we can honor the head and we can honor the heart and blend a few of them together. They live in different worlds. The head does not fall in love. Well, sometimes addictions do. They live in the head, not in the heart. But the reality is, if we can go back and forth, because that's not really love, but the truth is, if we can, sorry, I got a little sidetracked with that. But the truth is, if we can balance those two, we can walk through life with magic. And that's what the group's message is all about. And we're going to use some science. And you can call us pseudoscience if you want. I don't really care. But the reality is we're blending it together. And we're using what we wish to use and validate our work, even sometimes through sciences. I hope you enjoyed that today. I really have enjoyed talking with you this way, sharing some of this information. I do have a lot more wonderful interviews from some people I think you'll enjoy tremendously if you are a presenter and you have maybe a book out or have presented in different ways, especially in these areas. Give me a call. We'll talk. Espavo, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this incredible planet at this incredible time. It's time to step up. It's time for all of us to start making a difference and blending the head and the heart together as we walk through this planet. Espavo, thank you for taking your power.